The ships appeared over Earth on a Tuesday morning, silent and massive as moons. There were 12 of them, each one larger than any city, their surfaces gleaming with colors that seemed to shift in the sunlight. They didn't fire weapons or make demands. They simply waited, hanging in orbit like patient guests at a door. Within hours, every government on Earth was in emergency session. Military forces went on high alert, though everyone knew that weapons meant for other humans would be useless against technology that could cross the stars. Scientists pointed telescopes and sensors at the vessels, trying to understand what they were seeing. The ships absorbed radar and reflected light in ways that didn't make sense according to known physics. Then the message came, broadcast in perfect English, Mandarin, Spanish, and dozens of other languages simultaneously. The voice was calm and pleasant, like a teacher addressing students. People of Earth, we are the Galactic Collective. We come in peace and friendship. We invite you to join the community of worlds. Ambassador Felix materialized in the United Nations building 3 days later. She didn't arrive in a shuttle or transport beam. One moment the chamber was empty, and the next she was standing there, as if she'd always been present and everyone had simply failed to notice. She was tall and elegant, with skin that shimmered like oil on water and eyes that held too many colors to name. "We've been watching your world," Felix said, her voice carrying easily through the vast chamber. "You have reached the threshold. You have split the atom, touched your moon, and sent messages into the void. You are ready to learn that you are not alone." The questions came fast and urgent. Who was the collective? Where did they come from? What did they want? Felix answered each one with patience that seemed infinite. The collective was a federation of 7 species, she explained. They had existed in harmony for over 5,000 Earth years. Their territory spanned hundreds of star systems, and their technology had solved the problems that still plagued humanity. Disease, poverty, war over resources, all of these were relics of the past for collective worlds. "We offer you membership," Felix said. "We offer you the stars. Faster than light travel, so you can explore the galaxy. Medical technology that can cure any illness and extend your lives. Energy systems that will end your dependence on fossil fuels. All of this we give freely." The representatives looked at each other. The offer seemed too good to be true, and everyone in the room knew the old saying about such things. "What do you want in return?" asked the Secretary General Martinez. "Integration," Felix replied. "You must connect your computer systems to the collective network. You must follow our protocols for space travel and first contact with other species. You must accept our guidance in adapting your society to galactic standards. These rules have kept peace in the galaxy for millennia. They work because everyone follows them exactly." The debate lasted for weeks. Some argued it was a trap, that humanity would lose its independence. Others said refusing was madness, that the technology alone could save billions of lives. In the end, the vote was nearly unanimous. Humanity would join the collective. The transformation began immediately. Collective engineers arrived in enormous constructor ships that made Earth's largest spacecraft look like toys. They built shipyards in orbit, massive structures that assembled vessels using technology humans could barely comprehend. Materials formed from nothing, guided by fields of force. Components fitted themselves together with microscopic precision. The first human ship with a fond collective drive launched 4 months after first contact. The Endeavour was a hybrid design, built using Earth materials but powered by collective technology. When Captain Sarah Chen activated the faster-than-light drive for the first time, the ship simply stopped existing in one place and started existing in another, crossing 4 light years in the space between heartbeats. "It's beautiful," Chen whispered, watching alien stars fill her view screen. "It's impossible, and it's beautiful," Back on Earth, collective medical technology was saving lives by the thousands. Hospitals received devices that could heal wounds in minutes and cure cancers that had been death sentences. Power plants using collective fusion cores came online, providing unlimited clean energy. Poverty began to decline as basic resources became abundant. The other species of the collective arrived as ambassadors and teachers. The Tarathi, like Velix, were elegant and precise. The Kryn were massive creatures that moved slowly but thought with crystalline clarity. The Vex communicated through color and light, their bodies rippling with meaning. Each species had its role in the collective, and each performed that role with perfect efficiency. Human students attended collective academies, learning sciences that seemed like magic. Engineers studied the principles of faster-than-light travel, quantum entangled communication, and zero-point energy. Everything in collective technology was elegant, optimized, and standardized. Every ship used the same drive system. Every computer ran the same core programs. Every protocol was followed exactly, because that was how the collective maintained perfect harmony across hundreds of worlds. But even in those early days, some of the collective teachers noticed something unusual about their human students. They asked strange questions. Why did the drive system have to work exactly this way? What would happen if they changed this variable or that setting? Couldn't the process be done differently? The teachers smiled patiently and explained that the systems were perfected over thousands of years of development. There was no need to change what already worked flawlessly. The humans nodded and seemed to accept this, but their questions didn't stop. Ambassador Velix noticed it too. She watched human ships in the orbital shipyards, saw human engineers studying collective technology with an intensity that bordered on obsession. They weren't just learning how things worked. They were imagining how things might work differently. In her private quarters, Velix composed a report to the Collective Council. Initial integration proceeding as expected, she wrote. Humans are adapting to collective systems rapidly. However, I note an unusual tendency toward questioning established protocols. Recommend continued observation. She paused before sending the report, her many-colored eyes reflecting the lights of Earth below. The planet sparkled in the darkness, chaotic and bright, and utterly unlike any collective world. For the first time in her long career, Velix felt something she couldn't quite name. It might have been curiosity. It might have been concern. It might have been the first whisper of warning that the collective had just invited something unprecedented into their perfect ordered galaxy. The incident with the curiosity happened 6 months after humanity joined the collective. Captain Maria Santos was running a routine survey mission near the outer rim of explored space when her sensors detected something that shouldn't exist. What am I looking at? Santos asked her science officer. Lieutenant Park frowned at his displays. It's a gravitational anomaly, Captain. The readings don't make sense. Space is folding in on itself, creating shear forces that would rip apart any ship that got too close. Santos studied the swirling distortion on her view screen. It looked like a wound in space itself, beautiful and terrible. Send the data to the collective network. Let's see what the protocol says. The response came back within seconds, as it always did. The collective database had analyzed the phenomenon and issued clear instructions. Any vessel encountering such an anomaly must activate emergency fold space drives and retreat to a minimum safe distance of 10 astronomical units. Under no circumstances should any ship approach closer than 50. Wow, that's boring, Santos muttered. She turned to her engineer. Rodriguez, what do you think? Could we get closer? Engineer Carlos Rodriguez had been with Santos long enough to recognize that tone in her voice. It was the tone that usually preceded something either brilliant or catastrophic, and sometimes both. The protocols say, I know what the protocols say. I'm asking what you think. Rodriguez pulled up the technical specifications for their shields and power systems. He ran calculations, considered variables, and thought about a dozen things the collective manual said should never be attempted. Maybe, if we rerouted power from non-essential systems to the forward shields, and if we vented atmosphere from the cargo bays to create directional thrust, and if we... He paused, then continued with the air of a man suggesting something crazy. If we pulse the FTL drive in reverse while staying in normal space. Santos grinned. The manual says that's impossible. The manual says it's prohibited, Captain. That's different from impossible. I like how you think. Do it. The Curiosity approached the anomaly like a swimmer entering dark water. Alarms screamed as gravitational forces tried to tear the ship apart. Rodriguez diverted power with one hand while manually controlling the FTL drive with the other, doing things to collective technology that would have horrified its designers. The ship shuddered and groaned. Hull plates creaked under stress they were never meant to endure. Shields at 40%, Park called out. 30%. Captain, we need to pull back. Not yet, Santos said calmly. Rodriguez, give me another burst. The FTL drive pulsed backward, creating a bubble of reverse spacetime that pushed against the anomaly's pull. The Curiosity slipped sideways through forces that should have crushed it, and suddenly they were inside the phenomenon itself. The view screen showed something impossible. A tunnel stretched before them, stable and clear, leading to somewhere else. Not another part of normal space, but a shortcut, a wormhole that connected two distant points in the galaxy. Wow, Santos said, breaking the stunned silence. That's new. The discovery made headlines across the collective. The wormhole led to an unexplored sector rich with habitable worlds and rare resources. It was the most significant find in decades. But the collective council was not celebrating. Ambassador Velix stood before the council chamber, watching the recording of the Curiosity's approach for the 5th time. Around her, representatives from all 7 collective species radiated various forms of distress. They violated 3 separate safety protocols, said Councilor Tharn, his crystalline structure flashing with agitated colors. They endangered their vessel. They could have died. But they didn't die, Velix pointed out. They succeeded. By accident. By ignoring established procedures. Velix couldn't argue with that. The problem was that it hadn't been an isolated incident. Reports were flooding in from across human-occupied space. A colony on New Vancouver had modified collective terraforming equipment by adding human combustion technology, somehow accelerating the process by 300%. A human programmer had introduced randomized decision trees into ship AI, making them unpredictable but measurably more effective at handling unexpected situations. Most disturbing of all, human merchants were ignoring the carefully planned trade routes that the collective had optimized over centuries. They were finding new paths, creating new markets, introducing chaos into systems that had run smoothly for generations. And somehow, impossibly, they were making profits that exceeded collective projections. They don't follow the systems, Velix said quietly. They take them apart and build something new. That's exactly the problem, Tharn replied. The collective exists because we all follow the same systems. Order creates peace. Predictability creates stability. What happens when everyone starts doing whatever they want? Velix didn't have an answer. She returned to Earth to speak with human authorities, hoping to make them understand the importance of protocols. She met with Secretary General Martinez in his office, overlooking the rebuilt New York skyline. Your people are brilliant, Velix began carefully. But brilliance without discipline is dangerous. The protocols exist for a reason. Martinez leaned back in his chair. Ambassador, let me tell you a story. 50 years ago, our best scientists said heavier-than-air flight was impossible. 20 years before that, we thought the sound barrier couldn't be broken. Humans have a long history of looking at the word impossible and treating it as a challenge. But you could have died. Captain Santos could have killed her entire crew. She could have, Martinez agreed. But she trusted her engineer and her instincts. That's what humans do. We improvise. We adapt. We try things that haven't been done before. Sometimes we fail spectacularly. But sometimes we discover wormholes. Felix felt frustration rising, an emotion she rarely experienced. You don't understand. The galaxy runs on order. Every species has its role. Every system is optimized. When you introduce chaos, you risk everything. Or, Martinez said gently, we improve everything. Ambassador, with respect, your collective has been doing things the same way for 5,000 years. You've achieved stability. That's wonderful. But you've also achieved stagnation. When was the last time any collective species made a discovery like the one Captain Santos made? Felix started to respond, then stopped. She couldn't remember. The collective had perfected its technology generations ago. Since then, there had been refinements, optimizations, but no true innovations. Nothing new. We're grateful for everything you've given us, Martinez continued. The technology, the knowledge, the opportunity to join the galactic community. But you need to understand something about humanity. We don't just want to join your civilization. We want to contribute to it. And contribution means change. That night, Felix sent another report to the council. She recommended increased monitoring of human activities and suggested implementing stricter controls on their use of collective technology. The council agreed immediately. But as Felix watched human ships come and go from Earth's orbital stations, each one modified in small ways from the standard designs, each crew finding new and unauthorized uses for collective systems, she felt that strange emotion again, the one she couldn't name. It was growing stronger now, evolving from curiosity and concern into something else, something that felt almost like fear. Not fear of what humans might do to the collective, but fear of what the collective might need to do to humans to preserve order. And deeper still, a fear that the galaxy's perfect order might not be as perfect as everyone believed. In the darkness between stars, something ancient stirred. It had been sleeping for a very long time, waiting. Its sensors had detected the chaos spreading through collective space, the unpredictability, the deviation from established patterns. The hierarchy was waking up. The first collective world fell in a matter of hours. The attack came without warning, without negotiation, without mercy. Machines appeared in orbit around Kellara Prime, geometric and cold, their hulls darker than the space between stars. They didn't broadcast demands or issue ultimatums. They simply began systematically destroying everything in the system. The collective defense fleet responded exactly as their protocols dictated. Ships moved into standard formation. Weapons fired at optimal intervals. Tactical computers calculated the most efficient targeting solutions. Everything was done perfectly, exactly as 5,000 years of military doctrine prescribed. The machines destroyed them all. Ambassador Felix watched the tactical display in the council chamber as the markers representing collective ships winked out one by one. Around her, the counselors sat in stunned silence. In their entire history, the collective had never faced a threat like this. What are they? Someone whispered. Counselor Tharn's crystalline form had gone dim with shock. Records indicate the hierarchy. Machine intelligence from before the collective was formed. They were dormant. We thought they were extinct. Why are they attacking now? Felix asked. Because we woke them. Tharn pulled up ancient data files, information that hadn't been accessed in thousands of years. The hierarchy was built by a species that no longer exists. Their purpose was to maintain order in the galaxy. They analyzed everything, predicted everything, controlled everything. They were defeated and shut down because they were too efficient, too perfect. They eliminated anything unpredictable. Felix felt ice in her veins. And now there's unpredictability in collective space. The humans, Thun said quietly. The chaos they've introduced. It must have triggered the hierarchy's wake protocols. 2 more collective worlds fell in the following weeks. Each time, the pattern was the same. Collective fleets engaged the enemy using optimal tactics, and each time they were completely destroyed. The hierarchy didn't just defeat them. It anticipated every move, countered every strategy, exploited every tactic before it could be deployed. They've analyzed us, Felix reported to an emergency session of the Council. 5,000 years of collective military history. Every battle we've ever fought, every tactic we've ever used. We're too predictable. They know exactly what we're going to do before we do it. Then we change tactics, suggested a Vex counselor, their body rippling with urgent colors. We've tried that. They predicted our changes. They've modeled our psychology, our decision-making processes, everything. When we face a threat, we respond in specific ways. We can't help it. It's how we think. The council chamber fell silent. The greatest minds of 7 species had no solution. Their perfect order, their optimized systems, their 5,000 years of harmony, all of it had become a fatal weakness. There is one option, Felix said slowly. She could hardly believe she was about to suggest this. The humans. The reaction was immediate and negative. Counselors protested, argued, dismissed the idea as desperate madness. Humans had been in the collective for barely a year. They didn't understand proper military doctrine. They violated protocols constantly. They were chaos incarnate. Exactly, Felix said. The hierarchy can predict us because we're orderly and logical. But humans? They're neither. They improvise. They do things that don't make sense. They break rules we didn't even know could be broken. Asterisk, that's not a military strategy, Don objected. That's gambling with billions of lives. We're already losing billions of lives. What do we have left to lose? The council debated for 3 days while another world burned. In the end, desperation won. They contacted Earth and requested military assistance. Admiral James Chun, formerly of the Earth Space Navy, now attached to the Collective Defense Force, received command of a joint task force with a single directive: stop the hierarchy by any means necessary. Chun was 60 years old, gray-haired and calm-eyed, with a reputation for unorthodox thinking even among humans. He studied the battle reports from the hierarchy attacks with growing interest. They're too good, he said to his staff. Perfect targeting, perfect timing, perfect tactics. They win because they're playing chess and they've already calculated all the possible moves. How do we beat that, sir? Asked Commander Lisa Park, his tactical officer. We stop playing chess. We flip the board over and start playing something else entirely. Chun's first order baffled every non-human officer in the fleet. He implemented random patrol routes that followed no logical pattern. He assigned ships to positions that made no tactical sense. He told his captains to use different tactics every time they engaged the enemy, and specifically instructed them to ignore his orders if they thought of something better. You're creating chaos, Felix said, watching from the flagship's observation deck. I'm creating unpredictability, Chun corrected. The hierarchy wins because it can calculate what we'll do. Let's see how it handles randomness. The first engagement happened near the outer rim. 5 hierarchy ships emerged from fold space near a small mining colony. Chun's task force was waiting, but not in any formation the collective had ever used. Ships were scattered across the system in what appeared to be complete disorder. The hierarchy vessels moved to attack the colony, following the logical assumption that defending the civilians would be the collective's priority. Instead, half the human ships ignored the colony entirely and attacked from random vectors. One captain, Commander Sarah Kim of the destroyer Relentless, did something that made collective observers think she'd gone insane. She rammed her ship directly into a hierarchy vessel. Not at full speed. Not as a suicide attack. She accelerated to ramming speed, then at the last second, diverted all power to forward shields and fired every weapon at point-blank range. The impact nearly destroyed the Relentless, but it crippled the hierarchy ship completely. The machines had no data on intentional ramming attacks. The tactic was too inefficient, too wasteful, too insane for any logical species to attempt. Kim's shields failed, and her hull breached in 3 places. But she was already pulling back, her crew frantically patching holes while still firing weapons. "Target destroyed," she reported calmly, requesting repair support. The battle continued for 17 minutes. Human ships didn't maintain formation. They swarmed. They attacked from illogical angles. One captain used his cargo hauler as a weapon by filling it with volatile materials and setting it on a collision course. Another discovered that the hierarchy ships had a slight delay in their targeting when dealing with multiple random threats, so she ordered her wing to fly in deliberately chaotic patterns. When the hierarchy vessels retreated, Chun's fleet had lost 3 ships and damaged a dozen more. But they destroyed 4 hierarchy vessels and driven off the 5th. It was the first collective victory since the war began. "You sacrifice ships unnecessarily," a Kryn admiral said afterward, massive and disapproving. Commander Kim's ramming attack was wasteful. She could have used standard long-range bombardment, and the hierarchy would have predicted that and countered it, Chung replied. Kim did something unexpected. Something the machines couldn't model because it doesn't fit their parameters for rational behavior. Velix understood then. The humans weren't just fighting differently. They were fighting in a way that was fundamentally incompatible with how the hierarchy thought. Every illogical decision, every protocol violation, every seemingly stupid tactic was a weapon against an enemy that could only process logic. "You're using chaos itself as a strategy," she said. Chun smiled. "Now you're getting it. The hierarchy has analyzed 5,000 years of collective warfare. But we've only been out here for 6 months. They don't have enough data on us. And even if they did, humans don't fight the same way twice. We make it up as we go along." News of the victory spread through the collective. For the first time since the war began, there was hope. But the hierarchy was already adapting, gathering data on human tactics, learning from its defeat. The real test was coming. The hierarchy's primary fleet was moving toward Nexus Prime, the collective's capital system. If it fell, the collective would fall with it. And Admiral Chun had just 6 weeks to figure out how to defend against an enemy that was now studying humanity's chaos. Trying to find patterns in the randomness, the hierarchy fleet arrived at Nexus Prime exactly when Chun's analysts predicted it would. 247 vessels, each one a masterpiece of cold mechanical efficiency, emerged from fold space in perfect formation. They moved with the inevitability of mathematics itself, a dark tide rolling toward the heart of collective civilization. Chun stood on the bridge of the flagship Defiance, watching the enemy approach. Around him, officers from 7 different species worked at their stations. Human, Tarathi, Kryn, Vex, and others, all united in desperate purpose. The combined collective defense fleet numbered 300 ships. But everyone remembered that numerical superiority had meant nothing in previous battles. They're adapting. Commander Park reported, studying the hierarchy formation. They're not using the tight formations from earlier engagements. They're spreading out, accounting for our swarming tactics. Good, Chun said, which made several alien officers look at him in confusion. That means they're trying to predict us. Let's give them something to predict wrong. Chun's orders for the Battle of Nexus Prime read like a list of things that should never be done in military operations. Ships were assigned to random positions with no regard for tactical optimization. Captains received contradictory instructions. Some wings were told to attack aggressively, while others were ordered to defend. And then those orders were randomly changed every few minutes. The collective admirals, watching from the command center, were horrified. This wasn't strategy. It was barely controlled pandemonium. Trust him, Felix said quietly. She'd been watching humans long enough now to recognize method in their madness. He knows what he's doing. The battle began with the hierarchy vessels advancing in calculated precision. Their weapons fired in perfect synchronization. Their movements were optimized for maximum efficiency. They were magnificent and terrible. The ultimate expression of order. Then they hit the human lines and everything fell apart. The Relentless, still scarred from Commander Kim's ramming attack weeks earlier, didn't engage in long-range combat. Instead, Kim pushed her engines past safety limits and charged straight at a hierarchy dreadnought. But this time, she didn't ram. At the last second, she spun her ship laterally and released her entire payload of missiles at point-blank range. Then used the explosion itself as cover to escape. The hierarchy dreadnought's shields handled the missiles. But it had calculated for a ramming attack based on previous data. It had positioned itself to minimize ramming damage, which left it vulnerable to the missile barrage from an unexpected angle. Its shields collapsed on one side. Across the battlefield, human captains were improvising. A merchant vessel commander named Rodriguez, piloting a converted cargo hauler, filled his holds with containers of combustible mining explosives. He flew straight into the middle of a hierarchy formation and detonated everything, sacrificing his shields but creating a massive explosion that disrupted the enemy's perfect spacing. Rodriguez survived. Barely. His ship was a wreck. Atmosphere venting from a dozen holes. But he was already calling for pickup while his crew sealed themselves into emergency pods. That was stupid, a Kryn captain observed. That was brilliant, Chung corrected. He created chaos in their formation. Look, 3 of their ships are out of position now. They're trying to recalculate optimal spacing. But the real innovation came from Lieutenant Sarah Kim, who'd been studying the hierarchy's behavior patterns for weeks. She noticed something in the data. The machines had a processing delay just milliseconds during their calculation cycles. It was imperceptible against normal enemies, but Kim realized it was a vulnerability. She opened a communication channel to Admiral Chun. Sir, requesting permission to try something that will either work brilliantly or get me court-martialed. Chun almost laughed. Approved. What are you thinking? Information warfare. The hierarchy processes everything, looking for patterns and threats. What if we give them too much information? Meaningless data they'll waste processing power trying to analyze? Do it. Kim transmitted everything in Earth Cultural Database directly at the hierarchy control nodes. Jazz music, prime number sequences, internet memes, cat videos, poetry in 17 languages, mathematical proofs, random noise, cooking recipes, everything humanity had ever created. All of it compressed into a massive data stream aimed directly at the enemy's processing centers. The effect was immediate and devastating. The hierarchy vessels slowed. Their perfect coordination fractured. Their targeting became erratic. They were trying to analyze the data, searching for hidden weapons, secret codes, tactical information buried in the chaos. But there was nothing hidden. It was just noise. Beautiful, random, meaningless human noise. And while the machines struggled to process the unprocessable, Chun ordered the final assault. Now it wasn't just humans fighting with chaos. The collective fleet, inspired by weeks of watching human tactics, abandoned their rigid protocols. Kryn dreadnoughts, which had followed the same tactical doctrine for 3,000 years, tried new maneuvers. Vex light cruisers stopped moving in their traditional elegant patterns and started swarming like angry insects. Tarathi commanders issued orders based on intuition rather than calculation. The galaxy's most orderly civilization learned to embrace disorder. A collective science vessel, never meant for combat, rammed its shields into a hierarchy cruiser's weapon array, disabling it just long enough for a human destroyer to finish it off. Two Kryn captains coordinated an attack that violated every principle of their military tradition, and it worked. The entire collective fleet was improvising, adapting, becoming unpredictable. The hierarchy couldn't process it. Their million-year-old databases had no reference for this. Order turning to chaos. Logic embracing randomness. An entire civilization learning to be unpredictable in real time. The tide turned. Hierarchy vessels began retreating, but even their withdrawal was disrupted by the data overflow Kim was still transmitting. She'd added new elements now. Philosophical paradoxes. Unsolvable equations. The complete works of Shakespeare. A detailed recipe for chocolate chip cookies. "They're running," Park said, disbelief in her voice. "They're not running," Chun corrected, watching the tactical display. "They're retreating to recalculate. We've introduced too many variables they can't account for. But they'll be back. Not if we don't let them adapt," Felix said. She joined Chun on the bridge, her shimmering skin reflecting the lights of battle. "I'm recommending to the Council that we restructure our entire military doctrine. No more standardization. Every fleet should develop its own tactics. Every captain should have autonomy to improvise." Chun nodded. "Make chaos the doctrine itself. Make unpredictability the only thing they can predict about us." The Battle of Nexus Prime lasted 4 hours. When it ended, the hierarchy fleet had withdrawn into dark space, damaged and confused. The collective had lost 63 ships, but they'd saved their capital world. More importantly, they'd learned something their perfect civilization had forgotten. Sometimes survival requires breaking the rules. In the weeks that followed, the collective transformed itself. The Council established the Department of Creative Solutions, staffed primarily by humans, but open to any being willing to think differently. Military academies began teaching improvisation alongside tactics. Engineers were encouraged to modify standard designs. The word protocol became a suggestion rather than law. Ambassador Felix watched it all with something like wonder. Her people had achieved perfect order 5,000 years ago and had stopped growing. Now, infected with human chaos, they were evolving again. She found Chun in the observation deck of Nexus Station, looking out at the ships being repaired from the battle. "You've changed us," she said. "You changed yourselves," Chun replied. "We just showed you it was possible. The Council is voting to give you the Star of Unity. It's our highest honor." "I'll probably drop it or lose it somewhere," Chun said with a slight smile. "Yes, probably. That's why we're also making you a permanent military advisor. Someone needs to keep teaching us to be chaotic." During the award ceremony, Chun did exactly what Felix predicted. He went off script in his acceptance speech, made a joke that didn't translate well into Tarathi, and accidentally started a diplomatic incident with the Kryn delegation by using the wrong gesture of respect. The incident somehow resulted in a new trade agreement between Earth and the Kryn homeworld. "Perfectly human," Felix said, watching from the audience. "Chaotic, unpredictable, and somehow exactly what we needed." The hierarchy remained in dark space, processing what had happened. For the first time in their existence, they had encountered something they couldn't predict or control. The machines would need time to adapt, to find patterns in the chaos. But humanity and the collective weren't standing still. Every day, they grew more unpredictable, more creative, more alive. The galaxy's perfect order had learned to dance with chaos, and the dance was just beginning. Somewhere in Earth's orbital shipyards, a human engineer was already modifying a collective drive system in ways that would horrify its designers. A merchant captain was plotting a new trade route that made no logical sense but would somehow prove profitable. A scientist was asking questions about collective technology that no one had thought to ask in 5,000 years. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Superior technology could win battles, but chaos, controlled, creative, human chaos, could win wars and change civilizations. And in a universe that had grown too comfortable with order, that was exactly the revolution that was needed.